Good afternoon. Welcome to see me as well as to see my office, which right now is kind of cluttered. Judy and I just returned from a little over 2 weeks out in the southwest uh, part of the United States. I've elaborated more on that in my discussion board introduction, so you can read there. And always feel free to ask questions. And if you check in on my Facebook account, you can see a number of pictures that I've taken, and I still have a few more to post. I am Dr. Frank Beaty, and I am your professor for this course. I'm delighted to be able to teach you and to learn with you as we study cultural dynamics of congregational ministry. I am convinced that there are more ministry crashes because of failure to understand culture than there are for moral or financial inappropriate behavior. A joke in our church for many years was a man who came to candidate to be our pastor from the Chicago area was asked, well, since you don't own a car and don't have a driver's license, how will you go in funeral processions? And he said, well, I'd ride my bike. Total lack of comprehension of what it meant to live in rural Western Illinois in the 1950s. I was raised on a farm in Western Illinois, and my parents were farmers, but they were also dedicated Christians. They loved the Lord Jesus Christ with their heart, soul, and mind, and their billfolds and their time. They gave so much. They were growing Christians as a young married couple with one child, and God opened the door for them to be able to buy this farm. The only bad thing was there was no church within 10 miles, and in 1939, that was an issue. Travel was not easy. For the first year, they traveled 15 to 20 miles back to the church that they had attended before they moved, but they were concerned that their family, their children, would grow up in a community church where the kids would go to school together, they'd go to church together. And so they became key players in planting a church in our community. About a quarter of a mile from our farm was a closed church building. And my parents helped get that started and invested heavily, far more than what any of us kids realized. They didn't talk about it, they just did it. My sister and I were talking this summer how back in those days, Vacation Bible School was 6 days a week for 2 weeks. And we would invite children from outside the community to come and stay with us. And our mom would fix all the food. She would do the washing. She would pick up 1 or 2 carloads of kids, which was far more in those days because you didn't have to have seat belts and all of those kind of things. And they loved the Lord and were the firecracker for that church to get started. Judy and I drove by it this week, and it still is thriving. And our hearts are thrilled how God has used that congregation throughout the world, sending out missionaries and pastors, and such a powerful impact. That's my heritage. God has so blessed me. We lived on a typical family farm of the 40s and 50s. We raised hogs, we raised beef cattle, we had a small dairy herd, we raised chickens for eggs and meat. We had a big garden. We lived pretty self-sufficiently. Then when I was about 12 years old, when my dad's family gathered one Sunday afternoon, my uncle brought along a little ewe lamb. One of his ewe sheep had triplets, and he was going to kill the runt because he didn't think she would make it. unless one of the family would like to take it. Now, my dad had years before I was ever born decided there was never going to be another sheep on his farm. But somehow, he allowed me to adopt this little runt. What a lesson not lesson, what lessons God taught me through raising that little sheep. I learned so much about what it means to be a shepherd of a congregation from that little lamb and that experience. When I was somewhere around 7 or 8, our church did a missions trip to a village about 25 miles away to do a Bible school. My sister was old enough to drive, and so I rode along in the car with other people who were going to help conduct this Bible school, and I participated in the Bible school. I memorized Isaiah 57, 20, and 21 in the King James Version, of course. In those days, that was the only one that was available. But I memorized Isaiah 57, 20, and 21. But the wicked are like the troubled sea whose waters cannot rest. They cast up mire and dirt. There is no peace, saith my God, to the wicked. Those are profound words that God etched on my heart, and then he accented it by our school teacher in the little one-room school. It took us on an outing. I think there may have been another parent or two who drove cars, but the car was packed with kids. And as we came down the hill to go across the river bottom, we drove on the dike that was the foundation for the road. As I looked out this side of the car, I saw muddy, dirty water swirling. What a mess. And on this side, likewise. But the wicked are like the troubled sea. There's no peace. It was a few Sunday nights after that event that I went directly to my bedroom after we'd come home from church, and I knelt down and asked Christ to come into my heart. I planned to go to the University of Illinois School of Agriculture and return to the farm. However, when I was in my sophomore year, one Sunday morning as I was reading my Sunday school lesson, it was as if words jumped out of the page. Be sure that what you say is God's will for your life is not your own selfish will. Wow, now that's a challenge. And as I prayed and pondered that, I realized that I at least ought to go to Moody for at least 1 year. My brother and sister had both gone there. And so I enrolled and was accepted, and I went off to Moody Bible Institute as a young man. After my first year, I returned home to help Dad on the farm, but a pastor friend of mine who lived a few miles away saw me and said, "Hey, sometime when you get the chores done, come on over, and I'd like to visit with you." That intimidated me some. He had dated my wife, but he was married now. But I wondered what he was going to remember that I hoped he didn't remember. But as we chit-chatted, we finally got down to what he was wanting to talk to me about, and that was a small village church had voted the mainline denomination out, and they were needing a pastor. A pastor? I'm 19 years old. I'm in college. But he had done this before, where he traveled from Chicago down to Galesburg and then pastored a church. And so he had provided me a model, and I out of respect for him, I agreed to go preach for them on one Sunday, and they ended up calling me, 19 years old, to be their pastor. So my schedule for the next 2 years was Friday afternoon, I'd get on the train and ride a couple hundred miles down to Galesburg, get my car, do pastoral ministry Friday night, Saturday, and Sunday, and Monday morning, about 2 o'clock in the morning, I would catch the train back to Chicago and arrive in time to take a shower, eat breakfast, and be on my way with various responsibilities in the. I was very active in the missionary movement on campus, and so God used that. I did that for 2 years. And the week after we graduated, I married my wife, and we stayed there for 2 more years before I enrolled at Dallas Theological Seminary. That village where I pastored was the same village that my home church had done Bible school in. Isn't God amazing? Wow. I want to say welcome to you and to the class. I hope that you will learn a lot as we study cultural dynamics of congregational ministry in these coming weeks. God bless you, and you have a great day and a great 8 weeks with learning with me.